Most players waste their time and lose out on a ton of free LP because they overlook the 6 critical steps for carrying their team that should be done in every game you play. So in this video, I'm gonna show you the exact system I use to climb to Challenger, and my clients are climbing with it too. Okay, so to start, for 90% of the players, midgame can feel like a complete mess. No one has any idea what they're doing, everyone's running around like headless chickens, and I used to feel the same. But it's actually way easier than you think. And if you include these 6 steps in every game you play, I can guarantee you're gonna win more games. To really get what midgame is all about, you have to think of it like a group project in school. So here's step 1, and this is really important because if this fails, we cannot really impact the game anyway. Have you ever been in a group project and you get tasked with making the presentation slides, but you've never done this before and you barely even know how PowerPoint works? Well, I have, and I've felt some classes over it. Our champion is basically the same, and we want to play out our mid-game towards the strengths of our champion. We call that champion identity. A very good example is a control mage. What do? Well, they're really good at controlling choke points. So what they want to be achieving during the game is they want to let the enemies run into them. They want to set up vision, be early on a neutral objective, and control the choke points when the enemies are trying to retake the area. We do not want to go to the side lane alone and push deep, because then we're very vulnerable, we're gonna die, we're gonna lose the game and fail the class. Understanding how we want to fight and what our champion does is going to be a compass that we're going to be using throughout the entire game. And it's also going to dictate what kind of decisions that we're going to be making. So step 1 is understanding your champion identity and having a basic idea of how you want to be playing the game. Later in the video, I'm going to explain what you need to do when your jungle starts dying randomly. But first, we're going to move on to step 2. In my school, in most group projects, we couldn't choose our own team. We were actually assigned one, and in solo queue, that's exactly what happens as well. Anyways, in our class, we had a guy called Mart, and Mart was fucking smart. But on the other hand, we also had Billy, and Billy was not it. So at the day that the groups of the project were revealed, I was always praying that I was working with Mart and not with Billy. Depending on who I was working with, my role in the group completely changed. If I was working with Mart, I would support him, I would bring him some coffee, I would supply him some sources, because I knew that I just had to make his life easy and he would just carry the project to a successful end. But if I was working with Billy, I needed to tell him exactly step by step what I needed from him, because otherwise he just wouldn't do anything. So your solo queue is gonna be exactly like that. You're gonna get Marts and you're gonna get Billies. And throughout the game, it's up to you to find out who the Marts are and who the Billies are in your team. So you want to ask yourself these questions. It's very simple. Who or what is my win condition? Who is strong? Who is weak? And eventually you want to play for it. This can be the very fat Jinx or the very fat Viego in your team, but it can also be the fact that you have 2 dragons and you have a potential Dragon Soul win condition. The next question you need to ask yourself is, what is my role in winning the game? Am I gonna need to carry? In that case, I need to play towards my own champion's identity the best I can. Or do I need to adapt and play around this Jinx or this Viego? And in that case, we can't greed for the extra top wave. We have to sacrifice a bit from ourselves and play a little bit more around them. This is usable at any rank, but more important the higher elo you go. So the second step is ask yourself the question, what is my win condition and what is my role throughout the game? So we laid the groundwork, and now we're going to move on to step 3, where it's going to get a little bit more interesting. In school, I was the kind of guy that would procrastinate everything. I would try to turn everything in the latest I could. I had no motivation, and only 4 hours before a project's deadline would be there, I would start working on it. And I would be completely stressed and trying to get it done before midnight. Sometimes I succeeded, sometimes I failed, but regardless of it, the result was never actually good. It was almost always rushed and usually towards the shitty side, simply because I didn't put in enough time or effort to make it good. You may be wondering, Tim, why are you telling me this? Why is this important? What does this have to do with League? Well, neutral objectives are your deadlines. Midgame revolves around these neutrals. These neutral objectives are mini projects in itself. They are so strong that everyone wants to get them and fight for them, and they become fight magnets. That's the way I want you to think about it, fight magnets. So if you're gonna start early on your project and prepare these fights well, they're gonna be super easy to play out. But if you're late and you're gonna rush it like I do, right, you're gonna be in a lot of trouble. You're gonna lose the fight. These neutral objectives are so important that the entire mid-game gets shaped by it. So we have to be actively thinking about each objective. You're gonna ask yourself 2 questions, and this is very simple. First question, what's the next neutral objective? Very easy to spot with just tab. Can we fight? Yes or no? If the answer to that question is yes, ping it, set up vision control, block out enemy vision, force the enemies to respond to waves, block off the area, and make it impossible for them to contest the neutral. That's it. If the answer to that question is no, if we cannot fight, we can look to trade on the other side of the map, or maybe we are too late to the objective and therefore we cannot fight. No problem. Just give it, go towards the other side of the map and try to get something in return. The most important thing to do with every neutral objective is to have intention. And as long as you have intention and ask yourself these questions, it's gonna be a complete game changer. So now we know the first 3 steps about what to ask ourselves when in game, and that moves on to the first step, which is deceptively simple but incredibly powerful, and it's about when to ask ourselves these questions. And in my coaching sessions, this is actually the #1 problem my clients have, and that stops them from winning games. We do this in the lull states. Well, what are lull states? They're the moments in the game where there's not that much happening. Either we are resetting, walking to lane, or we're dead. And because there's not that much going on in the game, we can train our brain to think about the game and plan our next steps. So planning our next step, we actually instantly get to step 4.5, which is deployments. And deployments are actually the longest and the most important lull state in the game. That's whenever you're coming from base. We can make these deployments as complicated as we want, but in reality, I just ask myself 3 questions every single time I come from base. Question 1, we've seen it before. What is the next objective? Very simple. Question 2, can we contest? If the answer to that question is yes, we are gonna go towards that side of the map. If the answer to that question is no, we're gonna go towards the other side of the map. Question 3 is very simple. What is the locations of the waves? So rolling back to question 2, we got an answer on which side that we want to play on. That means that we can either open up towards that side lane or we can open up through mid. Those are the options if we know which side we want to play on. And you gotta then look at the location of the wave. So what is the wave doing on the side lane? Is it, I call it in my coaching sessions, in Narnia, like all the way far up under the enemy tier 2, or is it maybe pushing out into the enemies? In that case, you don't want to instantly go towards the side. You want to go through mid into the side because it gives your team some backup. It can help your team with generating vision and it keeps your options open. And that moves us to step 5. And this one is very important. Listen carefully. So personally, I didn't care too much about school, but especially the homework killed me. I just wanted to play League. So what happened in these group projects is that I would take the least amount of responsibilities on me because that meant I had more time to play League. But there were times where a deadline was coming up from the project and we still hadn't fully divided all the parts towards the members. And I simply didn't care about it too. I just wanted to play League, you know? So I didn't say anything because that meant that there would potentially be more tasks for me, less League time, and my group would probably just do the tasks without me anyway. Boy, was I wrong, because the people in my group thought exactly the same thing. I have had some bad conversations on some deadline days, and this was a line that I used very often. Oh, I thought you were doing the conclusion. Surely, I was actually very lazy. I scammed the shit out of some of my classmates. Good times. Which brings us to the point. If you know what needs to be done by asking yourself the questions from these previous steps, communicate that to your team. Picture your 4 teammates like 4 Billies or like me trying to scam my classmates. The only reason I would ever do something on time is if it would be communicated well and on time to me. So step 5 is the earlier and the better you communicate, the more likely it is that your team is going to listen to you. Which moves us to step 6, and without this step, nothing will work. The project is running smoothly, everyone's doing their job, even Billy. We're delivering deadlines on time, and the final deadline of the project is tomorrow. Everyone has done their part, and all that needs to happen is Billy just needs to put the files together in one big file. And he's done pretty decent this project, so we completely trust him on that. But then, message from Billy. Sorry guys, I accidentally deleted the group file. We have to redo it. Just as in League, shit happens. Your jungler dies 20 seconds before the dragon spawns, and I actually knew that my junglers were always Billies. But we set up the perfect macro plan, and one big mistake from a teammate can just completely ruin everything. Sometimes the game forces you to be flexible and adapt. This is where I used to lose my shit during the game. I even got banned for flaming my teammates a few years ago because I felt so powerless. I felt like I was the victim. But there's actually a very simple solution. You just start at step 3 again. So step 6 is be flexible and be okay with adapting and go for a different play if a play that you initially wanted to go for doesn't really look that good anymore. Mistakes will always happen, and it's up to us what we do with it, especially because the enemies will make even more mistakes than our teammates because, very simple, they don't use this system. So if you do these 6 steps in every game you play, the odds are simply in your favor. I can pretty much guarantee that you're gonna win more games. But now you know them, you need to make sure that you're strong enough to actually play out the mid game. So watch this video next in which I'll show you exactly how to get to mid game consistently.